Now to the candidates. We have 3 contested races for the election that we will feature tonight. Running to replace retiring Senator Jeff Edler in Senate District 26 are Republican candidate Kara Warme and Democratic candidate Mike Wolfe. Running to replace retiring Representative Dave Dio in House District 51 are Republican candidate Brett Barker and Democratic candidate Ryan Condon. Unfortunately, Brett is not able to be here this evening as a last-minute work obligation arose. Finally, Democratic Representative Sue Cahill is running for re-election in House District 52 and is being challenged by Republican candidate David Blom. Each candidate will be provided with equal time to respond to each question. Sarah will be our timekeeper, flashing cards for 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and stop. We will begin tonight with opening remarks for each candidate. You will have 90 seconds, and we'll start here with Kara. Oh.
So, good evening, everyone. Thank you, John and Marshalltown Chamber. Thank you, Sarah, for being our timer, and to those facilitating technology tonight. And especially thanks to all of you for taking time on a rainy night to be here. This is a great turnout, and it echoes the community involvement and energy that I found through all my time in Marshalltown in this campaign. I love the way that people in this community really care deeply about who their leaders are, about rebuilding after natural disasters, about being a community that can grow and thrive together. So you've had lots of opportunities to read about us in the TR, on our websites, flyers, mailbox, but I hope this can be a little bit more personal, that we do have a chance to ask questions and hear stories, and for you to feel like you get a chance to get to know us a bit. I think Iowa is a great place to live, a great place to raise a family, and I'm running for the Senate because I want that to continue to be true for future generations.
Mike.
My name's Mike Wolfe, and I'm running for Senate. And I really appreciate all of you coming out tonight and all the people that have logged on. This campaign is about you and about trying to make sure that the views that my hopeful constituents want to see happen in the State House. I feel like we have an opportunity to change course from a regime where people just weren't being heard, regardless of how hard you tried to reach out. And I am running this campaign for you so that we can have something different, so that, someone will listen to your views, and here you are, showing up in person to ask your questions. Please do so tonight. I'd really like to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name's Ryan Condon. I'm running for House District 51. I never imagined that I would be up here running for office. Thank you for everyone involved getting this put together. I got involved with this a little better than a year ago when I was sitting around having coffee with my wife in the morning, and I was complaining, as usual, about the news of the day. And she looked at me and she said, "Ryan, you need to shut up or do something about it." I don't think this was what she intended, but here we are. Thank you guys for your time, your attention, and putting aside something in your lives to come out tonight. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you. I am Sue Cahill, and I am running for House District 52. I am running for my 3rd term. For those who don't know, a term is 2 years, so I am just completing my 4th year as a House representative and would like to continue on in that role. I have been in Marshalltown since 1990, and in that time I have worn a lot of hats. I have been a mother. I have been a child care provider. I was, and I continue to be many of these roles. I have done child care in my home. I have been a small business owner. I have been a union member. I have been a student. I went back and got my teaching education degree from Buena Vista. So I've been a student. I've been a graduate. I have been an employee of the Marshalltown Community School District for 23 years. I have looked at serving on a number of public and some of our positions that are our social and public agencies in town to make things better for our people. I have been, I've worked with the Catholic school. I have worked with education as a whole. From that point, I became a union president for the Marshalltown community folks at the Marshalltown Community Schools, and I'll have to end it at that. Thank you very much.
Howdy, my name is David Blom. I grew up here in Marshalltown. I wish I could say I was born here, but I was 8 weeks premature, so they rushed me over to Mercy in Des Moines, but I like to say I got back as quick as I could, and grew up here in Marshalltown, just over kind of between Pizza Ranch and Fisher School here in town. My dad is a structural engineer and got the chance after the tornado, and then unfortunately again after the derecho, to go around and help analyze and rebuild some of the structures that were damaged downtown and the houses around here. After attending Marshalltown High School, I graduated from here at Marshalltown Community College, and today I'm a union sheet metal worker up at Raymond Donco in Albion with that little Veterans Park next to it. And I'm proud to be there, but I've noticed that as we negotiate our contracts, it only goes up by a few percentage, and the cost of living goes up by a lot more. Our Social Security residents here in town have only gotten a 2.5% increase, and a lot of that's gone right back into Medicare, and their groceries have gone up. And so I'm really concerned about the people here in town and want to make sure they have an effective advocate in Des Moines. And I appreciate the chance to be here with all of you. Thank you to the chamber. Thank you to Sue and the other candidates. And thank you to the audience.
Excellent. We are getting flooded with great questions, which is good, and I am working on fitting those into broad topics that we've got, as well as specific questions that I've already drafted, and then creating some new ones on the fly. But I am going to start with a couple of the pre-prepared questions that I have, starting under the topic of economic development. And Mike, we'll begin with you. So economic development is a primary focus for our organization. I would like you to share how you would like to utilize your position in the Iowa legislature to improve growth in Iowa, and what specifically we might expect as a return to our district from those efforts.
In my day job, I am an estimator. I lead a team of 6. This year, we've put together budgets for about $750 million worth of work that will happen here in central Iowa. And that's something that I'm really proud of. I've got a finger on, at least my little corner of the construction world and how that works. One of the things that I am concerned about in the business that I work at, as well as where I've heard from other people, we don't have businesses if we don't have employees. And getting people to move to Iowa and stay in Iowa is something that I'm really concerned about, and I think is absolutely key to continued economic development in Iowa. And right now we have a climate where a lot of social issues are just making our younger people flee the state rather than try and invest their lives here in Iowa. And so for economic development, I think what we need to do is focus on our future, which is our children, make sure they have good public education, and that they want to stay here and build their lives here. And that's, I think, probably the key thing that we could do to build economic development in Iowa, is to focus on our future.
All right, Ryan.
Excuse me. So I do need to preface this first. I do work for the state of Iowa. I'm currently an eligibility benefit specialist, so the views that I'm representing tonight are my own. They do not reflect any way the state or the department that I work for. As to the question, I'm also concerned mostly regarding our labor market here in Iowa. I have 4 boys, and of those 4 boys, none of them plan to remain in Iowa. There's a myriad of reasons for that, some of which Mike did touch upon, some social issues. But more than that, there's a lack of opportunity here for Iowans. Take childcare, for example. Childcare is one of the most pressing issues during my day job that I run into all the time. We have people that want to work but simply cannot afford to have their children in daycare. It makes no financial sense for them to have their children in daycare to go to a job where they don't even break even. So when we talk about development, economic development, particularly in my district, that's something that we're going to have to tackle. I would love to talk about, yes, we need to lower tax rates and such for businesses, but that, I don't believe right now, is the most pressing issue. We need to get our labor market under control.
Sue.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that we're looking at how can we build our economic development in Marshall County. One of the things, I am an educator, have been involved in the educational systems, and I've seen our educational schools throughout the county working toward making sure that our students have a pathway to success. I believe back in the 70s, 80s, when I was a young thing, we often thought college, 4-year college, was the only opportunity for people to move forward. But through our programs, through our systems that we have in our schools, we are able to encourage students to look at a broad range of pathways, whether it is going to a 4-year college or psychology or accounting, or looking at trade opportunities, whether to be a lineman with Alliant or working to be a plumber. I earlier this week spoke to IJAG classes at the high school. It was very interesting as they told me what they wanted to do. Some of the top issues were healthcare issues and being able to work in trades areas. So I believe that part of our education system bleeds right into our economic development. We need to make sure our educational budgets provide for opportunities for students to get their work, and that the regents are viewed as a way for us to increase our economic development in the state.
David.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I've had the pleasure to get to know so many more businesses and creative people here in Marshalltown that I hadn't gone around every corner on every block yet. And so I've gotten to know a lot of wonderful small businesses who are creative. Some of them are really stressed out right now, some to the breaking point. It's been difficult to navigate new and changing regulations through the storms that we've had downtown. And so we've got a lot of positive infrastructure investments here in Marshalltown and Marshall County, but it's also really hard on some of those small and creative businesses that when you work 410s and sometimes, you want to go down to whack the static and get a great record, and you can't do that anymore, but it's also those small creative businesses that attract people to want to come to our town and make it a fun place to live, work, and play. And so that's really important. I wanted to also mention the Future Ready Iowa Last Dollar Scholarships that are a huge deal to high school seniors here in Marshalltown who are looking at getting an advanced degree in the skilled trades, and we need to make sure those are funded so that Iowa and Marshalltown and Marshall County continue to be a great place for value-added manufacturing to come and expand.
Thank you. Kara.
So economic development is complex and is all about collaboration, mixes of public and private partnerships and communities and businesses coming together. We've seen that job opportunities have really shifted, especially post-COVID, where there are a lot of remote opportunities for work when the broadband infrastructure is there. And so we see people choosing first where they want to live and then where they want to work in many cases. And that's a shift. And that means that communities that are attractive to people and that have amenities and quality of life, quality schools and churches and parks and things to do, attracts those people who then become the customers for the local businesses and the members of a vibrant community. And so I think that means when we're focused on economic development, quality of life has to be a piece of that. And that means we have to find a balance. We know that lowering taxes does stimulate the economy and give those opportunities for businesses to have more to invest. So I do support free market policies and lowering regulations and taxes whenever we can. I think we want to find that balance where we're investing in those local amenities. And you asked how I would help from the capital for our district specifically. I think it's really shining a light on it, bringing those opportunities here, bringing visibility to the great things that are going on in Marshalltown, because there are so many great things going on in this community.
Thank you. This next question we will begin with Ryan. It continues along with economic development, but specifically a question related to tax increment financing, or TIF. This is a program that has been utilized to achieve investment and reinvestment in throughout the district for many years. Over the years, there have been conversations discussing significant changes to the program and some consideration for outright elimination, which could substantially impact our communities. Can you share with us your perspective on the utilization of TIF and what, if any, changes you would like to see made?
Thank you for the question. I don't agree with totally getting rid of TIF. I do think that there needs to be some adjustment made to it, but tax incentives are a very important part of bringing businesses to our district. But again, it's only part of it. Taxes can only bring so much. I think the bigger thing that we need to worry about in Iowa right now is our labor. Taxes are important, but I don't think that they're the be-all or end-all of this situation.
Sue.
Thank you. I agree. TIF is a difficult subject to look at. When I sat on the city council for 3 years, we looked at how it could affect our downtown area, our Lenox and a little further east area, and other areas to try and bring in important businesses to help provide additional taxing for us. Even if we delay those taxes for a few years, we can bring back the ability for those businesses to then be taxable for the future. And I do believe that we need to be very selective at what we look at, but we also, these incentives are many of the things that do drive people to look at our community. We talked earlier, the last question, about, all of the economic development. It's not only the TIF and the physical standpoint of a building and the taxing for it, but again, do we have the workforce that can come forward and maintain that building? Our high school this week is going to cut the ribbon to show their new facilities for an industrial kitchen, industrial mechanics, woodworking, and mechanical engineering type of programs. So I think it's important to make these things consolidated and not just look at one aspect of them. Thank you.
David.
You're good. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, I believe TIF is an important tool, but it needs to be applied fairly and directly. It's important that, in general, our tax code is low, flat, and fair, so that both the businesses who are currently here and businesses looking to come have a competitive outlook over the long term compared to communities across the state and across the nation. But TIF needs to be an important tool in the part of that process going forward.
Kara.
Local governments play a critical role in leading our communities. You all have the opportunity to elect your mayor, elect your city council members, and I think each community is different, and we want to empower those local leaders to decide on the right approach to meet the needs in your community. And you have the opportunity to make changes on those leaders if they're not leading in the way that it meets your desires for the community. So I think that local control is really important. The balance to that is that as I talk to people at their doors, there is a lot of fear around cost right now. And as grocery bills are higher and property tax bills are higher and gas prices are higher and all of those things, it stretches the family budget. And so we do hear that feedback, and that's what raises the questions to a state level to say, how do we enable people to stay in their homes and to afford to be here and to thrive in our state? So as the others have said, I think there has to be a balance there where there's some baseline rules that keep it fair across communities, but wherever possible, we let those communities decide what are the projects they want to invest in and how can we use that to stimulate and motivate businesses to be in a local environment.
Mike.
Tax increment financing is typically a very local decision made by the local representatives of any municipality. And I am supportive of people having rules and laws as close to them as possible. Des Moines is quite a ways away from here. If Marshalltown wants to have its own tax increment financing rules, it should be able to. One of the things I do think we need to keep in consideration, though, is the chief concern that I've heard about tax increment financing is that it rewards the very biggest, often from out of our state. And if somebody wants to have a small business open in Marshalltown, that's not even often a thing that has occurred to them to ask for. So if we are going to support tax increment financing, I think the balance would have to be not just the local control, but also trying to make sure that we're affording opportunities to all Iowans and not just the biggest businesses that come in with, broad shoulders to shove their way in and demand some sort of something to give you their business here in town. So that's just something that I would be concerned about.
Thank you. We are going to shift into a series of questions related to infrastructure. And this question we will begin with Sue. Every candidate had expressed opposition to the use of eminent domain for the purposes of the carbon capture pipeline across our state. For decades, Iowa has led the charge on renewable fuels with growth and support of the ethanol industry, including 2 facilities within Story County. Ethanol interests have spoken routinely about the lack of competitiveness they face without the ability to gain carbon capture credits and the threat that they create to the industry and the agricultural producers that supply them. How would you balance the needs of our agricultural community and ethanol producers with the rights of private property owners? And what ideas would you like to advance within the Iowa legislature that would help support this industry, if not the use of eminent domain for the carbon capture pipelines?
Thank you very much. I do feel that some of the key words that he said are balance, agriculture, agribusiness, and property owner rights. I am a strong supporter of property owner rights, so I do not feel that eminent domain is the best way to go about in securing a carbon pipeline across Iowa. Especially when it is for a for-profit company. We know we've used eminent domain in the past, whether it's for a statewide good, rail or gas pipeline, something that needs to go through in our community to make us whole. But the gas pipelines are from for-profit companies who are trying to make their way in the world to find, a profit base that they can turn ethanol and the carbon into another product. I feel if we are moving our carbon-based products to South Dakota or North Dakota, those are going to just seep into the underground cave systems, and it will be difficult for everyone. We will all have repercussions in that area. I do believe that, again, property owner rights need to stand strong in this area.
David.
Thank you. Both my parents grew up on farms, and so eminent domain comes up, and all the farmers start to be like, how am I going to make a living on this land that's been passed down from generation to generation to generation? And I remember after my grandpa passed away, my grandma was telling me about how upset he was when they put a road across the farm, but eventually he was okay with it because it made him get his tractors around faster. But it was really impactful at the time for the way that he farmed and the way that other farmers in the area got their products to market. And so it's important that we have opportunities in limited circumstances for eminent domain for public utilities, but we're talking bringing gas to people's houses, getting water, electricity to where it needs to be. However, when it becomes a government program that's kind of made up out of thin air in order to invent an economic incentive, we really need to be looking at that with much more scrutiny and not allow eminent domain in that situation.
Kara.
I'm glad that we're getting a chance to talk about agriculture as the heart of our economy in our state. And Senate District 26 is very rural. All of Marshall County and also the rural parts of Story County. As John mentioned, there are 2 ethanol plants in Story County. And corn prices now are, the lowest they've been in a while and below the cost of production for our farmers. The last time this happened, it was the growth of the ethanol industry that really brought us back to a place that corn was profitable. I married into an Iowa farming family, so we own Century Farms in northwest Iowa, and our daughters will be the 6th generation stewarding Iowa farmland. I know how personal that land ownership is and how important private property rights are. Also, how important that opportunity to make a living and to have increased markets for the corn and soybeans that we have in this state. So you asked about what I would do to change it. And, I've had investors in my campaign who support the pipeline and investors in my campaign who don't. People who are looking for someone who's going to evaluate the data and come with solutions. So today, when you're proposing a pipeline of any kind, like Sue mentioned, all the other ones that exist, you take your map to the Iowa Utilities Board. Once it's approved, you cannot change it without starting completely over in the process and in getting all those easements. So someone like Summit Carbon, who has 70% voluntary easements already, ahead of some of the pipelines that were put in the past, would have to start over. So what I would like to see is for us to change that where you could adjust the route so that people could volunteer and take that payout if they think that's the best thing to do, and they'd have the opportunity to change those routes and allow for the need for eminent domain to go away.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you. One of the things I wanted to point out is when you introduced this question, I believe you said that we had all expressed opposition to the eminent domain use for the pipeline. And I would like to point out that Kara has taken $10,000 from the chief executive of the Summit Carbon Solutions. That is Mr. Pipeline. So that is the largest campaign donation to date in this race. It's the largest in these 2 counties. So that's not really opposition. One thing I would say is I don't oppose the use of I don't oppose the building of the pipeline, which would be the economic benefit that those ethanol farmers are looking for. The ethanol plants and the farmers that support them are looking for. What I do oppose is the use of eminent domain to cross private farm ground. You can't go more than a half a mile off of any particular route to hit a gravel road. And that's where the pipe could be, not somebody's ground, just down the road. And there's no reason for us to not do that. And it might cost more, but that's okay. It's his money. And it's not fair to the farmers for him to be making money off of their ground when they said no.
Thank you. Ryan.
So I think we need to be clear. This isn't about a road or a utility. It's not even really about agriculture. This pipeline has health risks associated with it. The science really doesn't back it. What we're talking about is a billionaire that wants to save some bucks and just take the land from farmers. That's it. That's all we're talking about. We don't need eminent domain. If he wants the land, he can pay for it, like anybody else would. We don't have to just give it away. And I do think it's somewhat disingenuous. My opponent as well has taken donations from the people behind this project. If you're going to say, I don't support this, then don't support it. It's not hard. It's wrong on a moral level. It's wrong on a legal level. It's wrong on a science level. This is chasing tax credits for a guy that wants to make more money.
I think eminent domain should be a last resort, but that was your word.
Yes, so I has expressed opposition to the use of eminent domain for the purposes of the carbon capture pipeline, not opposition to the carbon capture pipeline. And there will be an opportunity. I do have one question later, just as a preview to all of you. It'll come towards the end. Having an opportunity to respond to any accusations that may have been leveled against you during the entirety of the campaign by either an opponent or a constituent or anything like that. So I do have a question specifically based around that. So there will be opportunities to respond to any of those assertions. I do want to ask an additional question around infrastructure, this time around road infrastructure. David, I'm going to start with you on this one. So road infrastructure continues to be a large topic in our communities and seems to be a consistent topic in communities throughout the state of Iowa. Cost for repairing aging infrastructure continues to climb, and communities are feeling pinched for resources to manage that infrastructure. What responsibilities does the state of Iowa have in supporting communities in their necessary repair and sometimes full rebuilding of this infrastructure?
Yeah, I believe in Marshall County we've done an excellent job. The supervisors for many years have budgeted responsibly and focused on the most important infrastructure projects. And so Marshall County is not far behind where it needs to be. However, we do have counties in Iowa that are far behind. It's not fair to a county like Marshall County and the taxpayers here in Marshall County to bail out communities that have put other priorities forward. And so I don't think that the state should step in and completely pay for the entire projects. However, I do think that there's an important part when there's state highways and infrastructure that needs work that has a huge impact on our agricultural producers and consumers around the state who are struggling with the rising cost of gas and groceries. And so the state will have a continuing role in infrastructure and investing in infrastructure, but it shouldn't step in where local governments have dropped the ball.
Kara.
So as a person who's spent the last 10 months driving on maybe every gravel road in Marshall County, I will say that I agree with David that the maintenance here is well done, and you can tell when you cross between county lines. And I think it's critical that our farmers have access to deliver their crops, to get between their fields, and that all of us who are moving from place to place have a safe way to do that. So infrastructure and those interstates are certainly, I think, a key function of the state to keep those maintained, to think about it from a safety perspective and from an attractiveness and access to our communities. We might get there a bit later, but as you raise infrastructure, broadband is something that also really comes to mind. That's my background. I started working 10 years for AT&T and another 10 in adjacent companies that support telecom. We understand that that's become a basic utility, right? And so what used to be power and water, you add internet to that. And we do have dead spots still around our state. And it's something that, can really take away opportunities from lower income families, from people wanting to work from home, from telehealth and things like that. So when we think about infrastructure, I think we always need that access to broadband that enables us to close those gaps to services that may not be available there locally. We can access those when we have reliable internet.
Thank you. Mike?
One of the things that we can do to help improve the performance of infrastructure in Iowa is to make sure that we stop changing the administrative structures and lumping former agencies into one another. We've done a lot of consolidations, putting things into the DOT that weren't there before, and it's really been a disruption for the staff and for the mission. And so as a state, we could limit the changes for the administration going forward and just try and stay the course so people can focus on the real work of keeping our roads nice. And as Kara said, broadband access in our state, in our communities, is critical. We are really in a shift from being able to move to a small town and work there as a choice. Huxley Communications in Story County is doing great work as a co-op to try and make sure that those rural areas are well served. I'm really looking forward to it. They're down my street right now. So a huge part of economic growth in Iowa could also be a quality of life growth in Iowa if we get the infrastructure there for people to be able to live and work in our small towns.
Ryan.
So this is kind of a two-part answer. Yes, infrastructure is important, but it's a matter of dollars and cents, tax revenues, money, people to work it. And a lot of what we're dealing with is we don't have a lot of tax revenue left over in Iowa. One of the ways that we could address that situation is by legalization of marijuana. It's a revenue stream that surrounding states have implemented to very little detriment, and it's opened up massive revenues for them. Iowa can certainly, if Kansas can figure it out, if Missouri can figure it out, I'm pretty sure Iowans can figure it out. Law enforcement is on board with this idea. The people, poll after poll, want this. It's something that could help with broadband, our roads, our crumbling bridges, but we're doing it for some reason, I guess a moral stance. What we need is more money. That's an avenue that we can take. We should take it.
Sue.
Thank you. Well, I have to admit I agree with Ryan that I am in favor of legalizing marijuana for whatever purpose we can put that money toward. As we talk about infrastructure and as it relates to our business partners who are in the agribusiness industry. Yeah, that is key for our state. We know that we have to have those bridges that can hold the combines or the flatbeds that hold the materials that they're bringing to market. As part of the subcommittee, I am the ranking member on the subcommittee of budgets that relate to capital improvements, road use taxes, and other capital projects. And a lot of infrastructure has been funded through this fund. I also look back to after the pandemic, the current administration has put many, many dollars into our state that didn't always get voted on by our state congressional members, but that money has helped us to bring up our infrastructure, bring the bridges back to the appropriate levels, bring the roads so that we can carry our goods to market. It is key, and we have to have that balanced relationship between our agribusiness and our infrastructure so that we can all work towards more positive Iowa success.
All right. We are going to shift into a series of questions really around workforce and population. And Kara, we're going to start with you. So Iowa as a state is the slowest growing state in the nation in the last 100 years. As a state that is continuing to see our population age without replacement workforce, our industries will suffer, communities will continue to shrink. What policies or concepts would you like to see explored or taken up in the legislature to overcome that issue?
So I would say 100 years is a pretty long time frame to use for your data point there. And more recent data for Iowa, I think, is encouraging. That there are a lot of good things going on in Iowa. Iowa being ranked high as a place to live, a place to retire. We have a legacy of excellent schools and excellent affordability. And I know that there are many things that have been in the news lately that make us want to question that or think things are terrible. I'm a transplant to Iowa. I was born in Southern California. My dad was in the Navy there, stationed, and so I'm a product of California public schools. And I've also lived on the East Coast and in Texas and even overseas before settling in Iowa about 20 years ago. We chose to be here because of the many resources that Iowa has. And there are many people I have met at their doors who have chosen to move to Iowa for the values that are here of hard work and family and faith. I believe that what we're doing is attractive, not taxing retirement income, lowering income tax, and welcoming people into our communities. There are many immigrants in the Marshalltown community, and I value that. I think diversity is a beautiful thing that helps all of us learn more and creates opportunities for our businesses, for our children, and for all of us. So I think that we can continue to move down this path of welcoming people into our state, and I think the trends are very positive in that way.
Mike.
The data from last year that I've seen shows that the population of Iowa grew by 3,000 year over year. That's because 6,000 people from international communities migrated to Iowa. We had a net loss of 3,000 native-born Iowans. What that tells me is the people who have means aren't necessarily remaining attracted to Iowa. Our Regents institutions right now receive fewer dollars in state investment than they did when I went to Iowa State in 20 years ago. So and couple that with people just shocked at the cost of sending their kids to college right now. That's why their state has flipped the curve on investing in our future and putting it back on families rather than, having the state take a share. And we really need to focus on investing in our futures and not in, banking on the legacy of our public education, where we used to be the best in the nation. But rather right now we are siphoning money away from our public schools and giving it to private schools with no oversight at all. So if we're going to build the state and grow it, we need to invest in our future and have people believe us when we say that this is a place to grow and build your family.
Thank you. Ryan.
So I came from a military family. I was in the military myself. When I was overseas in Germany, Iowa was always the gold standard, even in that country. Iowa had the best schools worldwide. We are doing our dead level best to make sure that that is not the case. We have dismantled our AEAs. I have 4 boys. Every one of them is speech therapists. Under the new guidelines, I guess we're going to be paying out of pocket for that. I know with 4 kids, I certainly couldn't have afforded it. We've decided that we're going to do school vouchers. That's already cost us more money than they projected in the first year. Next year it will be worse, and the year after that it'll be worse. We've seen what's happened in other states. They've bankrupted themselves. Kansas literally bankrupted themselves under the same kind of scheme. I am from Alabama. They have no shortage of faith, and they don't grow as slow as we do. You were talking about Marshalltown. Marshalltown grew in spite of, because of the policies that we have. They tried doing the papers, please policy last year. So that 3,000 people Mike was talking about, forget that. Those are not things that make people want to come here. We have states around us that have legalized marijuana. They recognize gay marriage, a woman's right to choose. They have fully funded public schools. This is why Iowa's losing.
Sue.
Thank you very much. I do think that in the time I have been in the legislature, I have seen legislation come through that has put Iowa down at the bottom level. The bills that have come through that work with LGBTQ populations, there are bills that say, hey, you're really not welcome here because we don't want you to participate in sports. We don't want you to be able to say who you are in your schools. We don't want you. Iowa was one of the first states to abolish slavery. We were one of the first states to approve of gay marriage. We are one of the first to segregate our schools. We no longer carry those messages of being the first to protect the civil rights of people in our countries, in our counties, in our cities, in our state. I believe that we need to get back on a path that encourages people to say you are welcome here in Iowa, and not that you will be discriminated when you get here.
Thank you. David.
Thank you. I'm glad that Marshalltown is my hometown, but it's not the hometown for everyone. We have a lot of transplants here. Many people came from Central America and risked a lot to get here. Many people came from war-torn areas, including Burma, Myanmar. And so it's important that we recognize, I just hate the counting that, like, people who've moved here don't count as much. I think they contribute just as much to this community, regardless of their skin color, their ethnicity, or the new traditions they might bring with them. And that's really important to make sure that we count them just as equally as everyone else who were born here. I chose to come to travel up to Minneapolis for school because it looked like a fun place to hang out and be for a while. And then a pandemic hit, and unfortunately Governor Walz closed down everything that was fun to do. And it was really isolating on a lot of people. And so a lot of people went back to be close to family, and that's what I did. And I found a great job at Raymond Co. here in Marshall County. Every Christmas, they give us this great giant Christmas ham and maple syrup from Canada. They should get maple syrup from Iowa. I'm sure we make it here. But it's those family values that make people want to stay in their small towns, want to make them stay in their medium-sized towns, and make people want to move here and raise their families.
Thank you. I think just about everybody at some level brought up the diversity of our community here and talked a little bit about some of the immigration components. And so I have received a handful of different questions from audience members, and I'm going to work to kind of combine them into a larger conversation regarding diversity and unique needs, as well as some of the limitations or challenges that our community face. So, I think Governor Ray, Republican, was well noted and famous for his pro-refugee status and bringing new populations to the state of Iowa. Obviously, diversity is incredibly important here in Marshalltown and Marshall County, but it also creates unique community needs. Needs that maybe aren't the same in other districts throughout the state of Iowa. And so kind of the first component of this question is how do you plan to advocate and educate your colleagues on the values and the resources that we uniquely need? And I also want to dive in on a couple of very specific items that were brought up. There are a number of DACA recipients here in Marshalltown, and there's a number of folks that would be eligible to be DACA recipients if DACA was still accepting applications. And so while that's not a state decision, if you've got perspective that you wish to offer on that. And then finally, the English-only rules that Iowa has adopted or considered in the past. Being welcoming to newcomers sometimes means being able to offer things in multiple languages. As you think about, again, that education of colleagues, is that something you would be willing to advocate for, official government documents being offered in multiple languages to continue to make Iowa a welcoming state? I know that was a lot. I cannot repeat it. I hope you got it all down. Mike, we're going to start with you. You get the benefit of going first. Kara, I'm glad you took good notes because you're going last on that one. So,
I feel that the community in Marshalltown especially is really heartening as an example of what Iowa can be when we are at our best. It's welcoming, it's diverse, it's a fun place to be. I've had some of the best times in this campaign. I've been, visiting some of the street fairs that have happened in Marshalltown. You don't get that kind of community if we continue on trying to pass laws about immigration status where we would force law enforcement to try and determine if somebody was a legal resident or not. Especially when you consider how would they even know who to ask. And, of course, what you would end up with is racial profiling, which is the opposite of building community, especially in a diverse town. So educating our colleagues is pointing out to them that every Iowan is valid, every Iowan that is here wants to work hard, and it doesn't matter what color they are or what language they speak when they're doing it. They're here to help build their families and our communities. So that's really a key part of the education, is stopping the legislation where we're causing harm to communities. I wish I had more than 15 seconds left. There's a whole lot more to say about this question. That's as far as I'm going to get on it, though.
Thank you. Ryan.
So again, I spent the majority of my life around the world, Japan, Korea, Germany, Spain. And the funny thing about that is every country that I went to, they have bilingual voting. They have English on their ballots just as much as they do their own native language. So I'm going to bring it back to, if other people can figure it out, I have faith in Iowans that I'm sure that we can manage this. We are not talking a large amount of money in the scheme of things. Now, immigration in itself is a difficult issue. I do believe in DACA, but I have feelings regarding immigration as a whole. Again, I would need more than 90 seconds. But enacting legislation like the Papers, Please, and making these people feel unwelcome does nothing to help Iowa as a whole. We need these people here. We need their skills here. We need to help their children, educate their children so that they can be here, like David was saying, so that they're part of a family, part of the community. We need to encourage that, not discourage it.
Thank you. Sue.
Thank you. I spent 23 years in the Marshalltown school system, and I started out as an ELL teacher, English language learning teacher, at the kindergarten level. And I moved into a bilingual kindergarten teacher on through my career. That has given me more hope than almost anything else in our world at this point. When I spoke to some IJAG classes earlier this week at the high school, and when kids were like, "Hey, Cahill, I know you were my library teacher," and it's like, you're right. And the young man telling me, I'm going to be a lineman, I'm going to get into the alignment or the Alliant program and get my degree out at the community college, and they're excited about what they can do. These children that we have worked with, that I worked with, they are our future. They are our community. I look at our school district and said, I have a feeling we would have closed several schools if we did not have the diversity in our community, the people who came in and enriched us. When I walk into the bank, the doctor's office, the real estate office, the any other service agency, I see the future of Marshalltown. And we need to support that. We need to support our DACA persons who are under the DACA plan, and English only needs to go away. We are a larger society that could be better than that.
All right, thank you. David.
Thank you. I appreciate the work a lot of the people in this room and the people watching on the live stream have done over many years. Some of you before I was born, to make Marshalltown a welcoming place for people who are DACA, for people who follow the regular channels as well, and for people who came from desperate situations in refugee camps in Thailand in order to make Marshalltown their home. And so to all of them, I want to say welcome, and I'm glad you're here. Many of the relationships I've had growing up through the Marshalltown activities and school systems have been greatly enriched by the friendships I've had. I totally embrace the bilingual nature of our community. A lot of people will have my flyers hanging on their doors in both English and Spanish, and I think that's really important. I also think it's important that we recognize the public safety importance of having people in the home who can communicate in English, whether it be a kid or a young adult who's gone through an English learning program. My mom taught ESL at our church, and that's really important so people can communicate with police, with fire, and with their children's education. It's important for me just to connect with people and to remember that everybody is made in the image of God regardless of where they come from. So many people have pride in coming to Marshalltown, and I'm so glad they're here.
All right. Thank you. Kara.
So I mentioned earlier how important diversity is to me. While my degree was engineering, my minor was Latin American Studies, and I spent time after college living in Guatemala, Mexico, Dominican Republic, leading teams that were building homes and churches. And some of my favorite moments in meeting residents across the county have been those chances when there might be an American flag hanging at the door and you knock and then the person apologetically says that they don't speak English and can't communicate. And when I could communicate with them in Spanish and have that conversation and talk about what the process would be to vote and ask them what their concerns were for the community, that enriches the experience that I have in knowing what's important in this district, and it makes them feel more welcome. So I think communication is key, and having those opportunities to communicate in the languages that people know is a great thing we can do within our community. When we talk about educating colleagues, I think you raise a good point that many districts in the state don't look like District 26 looks. Many communities don't look like this. And so being able to tell those stories, bring those rich experiences that we have and the benefit that has been to workforce here, I think that, just being a positive ambassador for the impact it's had on the community can go a long way. And also inviting those colleagues to come. We aren't too far from the Capitol here. And John and team have done a great job bringing a lot of state agencies here, the IEDA and others. And so I think we can do that with legislators as well and let people experience the beauty that is the diversity of this community.
Thank you. And I appreciate everybody's briefness with what was a very lengthy question, and I will try to do better as we continue navigating through, but like I said, we have received a number of questions, so we're going to continue to try and champion through. I've received a number of questions related to property taxes, and I have a property tax question that I think will capture the bulk of people's perspectives. So, Ryan, we're going to start this one with you. So, property taxes have been a topic in the last few years in the state legislature. We've seen recent sessions that have eliminated special levies for cities, including voter-approved levies, and the creation of growth caps for communities. Our civic partners decry these as limiting local control and forcing challenges into the city budget process, particularly for entities like libraries that have had levies approved by their constituents. What is your perspectives on steps that the legislature should take regarding property taxes and local control?
So I am absolutely one of those people that is struggling with property taxes. When I bought my home, our mortgage was about $1,100, something that I could afford and live a good life. Now my property taxes, I live in Nevada, are about $1,800 a month. My mortgage is $1,800 a month, and that makes things a lot more difficult to deal with. As far as the local control, like Mike said, I think that it should be as close to the people as humanly possible. And if the people of a town want a library, they should be able to have it. They should be able to vote on it and enact whatever levy they need to. The state needs to do more in regards to property taxes. Again, we have revenue streams that we can tap to help alleviate some of that stress. We're just choosing not to do that. I have 30 seconds. But leaving this to towns to figure out how to make up the backstop of money that is no longer being offered through the state, because we did a massive commercial tax a couple years ago with no plan on how to fill that in. That's coming back to bite us. This is exactly what people thought would happen, and it's what's happening now.
Thank you. Sue.
Thank you. I have said before, and I'll say it again, I believe we have a shell game going on in a lot of our taxing and in our state's ability to say, hey, we're lowering your property taxes, we're going to lower your income tax. But what that brings about is, as John described, suddenly our communities, Marshalltown, is left with saying, how am I going to support that library that my voters voted on to give money toward? How am I going to support that community center that my voters voted on? How am I going to support the community band that the voters voted on? And there are 13 other entities and levies that voters voted on in these communities, but the state took away their power to receive funds. Those funds have to get thrown into the general budget. And we all know people want to have good roads. People want to have police and fire service in their community. They want to have some trails. They want some art. They want other areas that come out of that general budget. But the state has gone away. And even though I often hear people say, oh, local control, they have X'd out our local control in being able to apply our property tax system by taking away those levies.
Thank you. David.
Yeah. Other than who are you and can you help me find a job, property tax is likely the #1 issue I hear while knocking at people's doors. And so I think it's important that our local officials also recognize that at the state level we have to make hard decisions and choose between a list of many good options. And at the local level, that's a responsibility of our city councils, of our county supervisors, and our district commissions as well. There's lots of good things going on, and there's a lot of investment that we can do. And it's important that we make sure that we don't forget that there are families out there who are really struggling to put food on the table and to make their rent payments. And going up by $20 a month when someone's on a fixed income, it can be a real struggle for people. And so I know a lot of people in this room don't have that struggle, but a lot of people in our district do. And so I'm glad that the bill that was passed, I need to look more into the specifics of it. I'm glad that it grandfathered in space for us to continue funding the library and the priorities that we have here in this community. I think it's important that we also have local officials who are able to vote every year and be responsive to the needs of the community as it changes and as we grow more diverse and our needs develop, that we are able to shift where our priorities lie. Thank you.
Thank you. Kara.
So I haven't been in elected office before, and as I've sought out mentors and advice from those who've been there before, one thing I hear a lot is that nobody ever comes to ask you for less money, right, Mayor Greer? So, you have all of these great ideas and things that people want, but the list does grow, and everyone's costs have gone up, and so the requests grow and grow. And the issue is that people also don't want to pay more taxes in general, right? And property tax is a huge thing that we hear about. Assessments have gone up. Also, insurance costs have gone up for people, right? As we continue to have increasing extreme weather, right? I don't have to tell you that here, and higher costs for rebuilding. And so if your property taxes are going up and your insurance costs are going up, it does become an issue that we just hear about again and again. So I think it goes back to something Stu mentioned earlier in the concept of balance, right? Trying to identify those key quality of life services that people want and options for our local governments, and yet hearing that need and that pressure that people feel to be able to make ends meet and feed their family and stay in their homes. With my 15 seconds and libraries coming up so much, I do think that public libraries are a key part of communities and accessibility of information in so many different languages, in welcoming new people to our community. I spent so much time at story times at libraries with my 2 little girls growing up, and I just think that those are a key part of our communities that we certainly don't want to be at risk.
Thank you. Mike?
When people vote to have their taxes raised, they meant it. I think we should allow people to have those local controls. I mean, as hard as it is for people to vote to increase their own costs, they're not going to do that just on a whim. So it's nonsensical to me to take away people's rights to raise their own taxes on purpose. It's silly. One of the reasons that we are in a place right now where property taxes are so pinched and so high is that our state budgets have rebalanced themselves to do that on purpose. We've lowered our income tax rates to the point where there's no money left for the state to invest in the local communities. And when we do have money to invest in local communities, we're sending it to private schools. So when you rebalance the commercial property tax and promise local communities that you'll backfill that lost revenue and then renege after 2 years, local communities are going to struggle. All that's left is property taxes on people's homes. And so here we are in a situation where lack of balance at the state level in making budgets for working people rather than giving tax cuts for the incredibly wealthy, the working people are struggling, and we need to fix it.
Thank you. This next question, we will start with Sue, and I want to dive a little bit into some mental health care issues. Specifically, I want to talk about the IMPACT program. So the IMPACT program here in Marshalltown is the partnership between YSS and the Marshalltown Police Department that has embedded social workers into police response to address non-police issues and bring those folks into case-managed support. This program is being recognized nationally as a new standard to be considered for communities, but the funding is running out. The state of Iowa has largely underfunded mental health support services for years. What steps would you like to see the legislature take in supporting programs like IMPACT and addressing mental health challenges in Iowa?
Thank you, John. I'm very proud to have been on the City Council when the City Council voted to provide $150,000 to the IMPACT program to fund their first year. So if you hear that I turn my back on law enforcement, I don't. I believe in our law enforcement. We need to have them out doing the jobs that they are trained to do. The IMPACT program provides an opportunity for people to get other services that maybe then will not result in incarceration. It will result in help for those who have mental health issues, who have addiction issues, who have homelessness issues. That is our goal. I put forth a bill to the Iowa legislature in the last year saying, hey, let's put some money behind this IMPACT program and put it forth so that other cities could put forth a grant for that as well. They would have an opportunity. And the more I talk to the representatives from Sioux City or the representatives from Muscatine, they're like, tell us more. How do we get this in our community? How do we have our law enforcement working at what they should be doing, yet meeting the mental health needs of our citizens? I propose, and I will readmit those bills to our majority party and say, hey, we need to look at this. This is a good program, proven program. We need to provide it funding not only for Marshalltown, but provide that for other cities in our state as well.
Thank you. David.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember I was getting ice cream with a volunteer at the end of a long day of campaigning, and the person was like, "I recognize you from TV," and was like, "Hey, what's your plan with homelessness?" and rattled off a few talking points. And she was like, "Well, I just wanted to talk to you about the Impact program, because when I moved to Marshalltown and before I found a job, it was really important. They knocked on my window when I was parked and in the public park and said, 'Hey, and let's find you a place.' And now that person's employed and doing well in Marshall County, and I'm really glad to have her here. And so I believe it's really important that we have an advocate in Des Moines who can reintroduce that bill. I would love to reintroduce that bill and work with people all across the aisle and make sure that we get the Impact program funded here in Marshall County."
Thank you. Kara?
So I think and hope this will be a question where you're going to have universal support, because it is a program that people are looking at across the state and the nation, and we're really proud of it. So full disclosure, I work for YSS, right? Many of you know that. I supervise David Hicks, who leads our Marshalltown location, although, I learned more from him, I think, than in the reverse, and he's done such a great job here for decades. There are other partnership programs like this that exist. In Ames, the co-responder program is a partnership between the hospital and the police department. And there are other communities, a few other communities in the state that have programs like this. The issue really is funding. We are able to prove a lot of costs that we deter, right? You're slowing down ER visits. You're slowing down time that law enforcement has to spend and allowing them to get back to other things. So the value proposition is there, and you're helping people then get connected to housing and jobs and mental health services that they need. But those funding pots are all different, right? So when you deterred somebody going to the ER, it doesn't mean the hospital will write you a check to pay for your social worker, right? And so that's where I think we do need to continue to look at this at a state level. A specific pocket of funds that I would really like to see us look at are the opioid settlement funds. There are a lot of substance abuse involved incidents that tie into what you do in a co-responder program. That's money that's coming into our state from those lawsuits, tens of millions of dollars that will continue for 17 years from now, and that money was not allocated last session. And so I think there's some great opportunity there to use that as a pool that wouldn't increase people's tax bill, but would provide funding for key partnerships like this that help make our communities healthier. And mental health is absolutely a key part of having a healthy community.
Thank you. Mike?
One of the things about spending money in these situations is, the state's going to increase its budget, and so we're going to have more costs on all Iowans. But when you start talking about mental health problems and helping people, if we spend a little money sooner, then that person is someone who can go to their job. And if we spend a little more money sooner, then somebody is in a rehab program instead of in a prison. So those people that we are able to help sooner, it costs less to help them sooner, and they're then paying taxes. So if we have a little bit of increased investment in Iowa's mental health program, then we have a lot of increased revenue from the people who are no longer struggling. And I would say that there is a whole lot of room to increase budgets for mental health in Iowa, in that we are dead last in a whole lot of categories around mental health support and access and beds. We have not invested properly in this area in our state. And, one of the key programs that I have at my place of employment is we have people committing suicide, our coworkers and our friends and our family, and we are trying desperately to help these people within our own communities. And I need to see the state doing that across the board, giving resources for helping struggling Iowans.
Thank you. Ryan?
All right, so this is a pretty massive question to try to tackle in 90 seconds, because the issue is larger than just impact or social workers with police officers. Social work, like I said, I work for the state in that field. We lose social workers every day. It's one of the highest burnout professions in the nation. It's hard to get people. It's hard to train people. It's hard to educate people. And then telling those people, oh, and by the way, you're going to be amongst the lowest paid in the nation. So, like Mike and Kara, we universally agree on this. I think we need to drastically rethink mental health here in Iowa. We need to have long-term residential facilities. When we say we care about mental health, we need to put the money behind it. If we care about it, then let's do it. Let's take some of this money, put it there. That will prevent police time, social work time, hospital, ER time. It'll save drug overdoses, suicides. This is a larger than 90-second question to answer.
Noted, and I don't disagree. We are limited on time, and we are going to be running up against it with probably 20 or more questions still remaining in the hopper, but it is what it is. We appreciate everybody's time. David, we're going to start with you on this question, and this is the one that I alluded to earlier. So there have been many accusations leveled at all of you as candidates. It is not easy to be willing to stand up and submit your name for consideration by the public, and that effort is made harder with the divisiveness we see playing out in politics across the country. What is one rumor or accusation that has come up that you would like to address and set the record straight on?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, John. I think it's really important that we consider those who run for public office carefully and look at their record, what they've said, what they've done, how they've voted. And so it's really important that people look, and it's really a job performance review on how our public officials have been voting, and so we need to look at what their actual voting record is and consider it carefully. I know many people get polls with candidates testing messaging, and it's really unfortunate when there's no citations on those, and so people will just at the doors will be like, oh, why do you want to cut Social Security and Medicare for our seniors? And I was like, what on earth are you talking about? I was like, and so that was really unfortunate because there's a lot of people who rely on those programs, and those are federal programs that are really important for people. And so I want people to know that I'm running to make sure Marshalltown has a strong voice in the Iowa legislature, that we have a candidate who can push forward programs like Impact, who can advocate for our jobs, who can make sure that every student, regardless of their parents' background or income, has a fully funded education, and to make sure that taxpayers have someone advocating for them in Des Moines. And so I really believe that it's important that we advocate for everyone in Marshalltown, that we expand access to contraception and make IVF more easy to attain. And so I understand there's people who have opinions, but it's important that we look at people's voting records in this situation. Thank you.
All right. Kara.
Thanks for the opportunity. We've spent a lot of time talking about diversity and immigrants, and so hopefully this is not a concern maybe of folks in this room, but I do think there has been a concern raised that because I'm not a lifelong Iowan, because I wasn't born here, that I somehow wouldn't understand what it's like to be in a small Iowa town or can't represent Iowa folks. And I think there's a lot of value in choosing to be somewhere, right? And evaluating your options and seeing something that you like and that you think is worth protecting. And so, as I've said, I didn't grow up on a farm in Iowa, but I chose to raise my family on one, right? And so we live on a gravel road, and we have cropland connected to our family that we purchased in Story County. I deal with a septic system and a well and a really dirty car, and I've made friends with many farmers and small town folks and people from all different types of communities across the district. So I want people to know that if my job is to represent you, then I want to get to know you and ask those questions and respond to your concerns that you raise. And so I think where you were born is maybe not the most important criteria for selecting your elected officials. And is that person willing to listen and represent me, and have they taken time to get to know what's important to me?
Thank you. Mike.
I actually got one of the push-pull calls to me. That was fun. to hear some of the things that were being spread in the community. And I think the one that really kind of resonated the most was, would it make you more or less likely to vote for Mike Wolfe if you knew he was going to raise taxes and cost thousands of Iowans jobs? You know, that's probably not what I plan to do. I'm not out here to cost you jobs. I am out here to help us build our state and build our community. We need to make sure that our tax systems are free and fair, and they're built around working Iowans, and that they're not built to make sure that the wealthiest pay the same as the para in the local elementary school. There's room for some progressiveness in our tax code, and we need to make sure that we're looking out for regular Iowans. Does that mean that maybe that the people who make over $500,000 a year pay a little bit more in income taxes? Yeah. Is that going to cost thousands of Iowan jobs? No. No, it will not. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan.
Well, I don't know what you folks have been doing wrong. Everybody loves me. No. In all seriousness, the thing I guess I've heard is I'm a bully. I'm a bully. No, but I am passionate. I feel like the middle class has taken it on the chin for about the last 30 years or so, and we just keep taking it. I'm tired of it. I'm willing to call people out that want to continue that situation. I'm willing to talk to anyone about anything. Some of my biggest supporters running as a Democrat are Trump supporters. I have people that have Save America, Trump 2024 flag flying on their lawn with a Ryan Condon sign right beneath it. So I'm with Kara. It's about representing people, talking to everyone, not just a select group. I have a quick story. One of the times I was out knocking doors, I had a guy who found out I was a Democrat, told me to get the hell off his lawn. And then after I told him I was a veteran, he let me come up. I talked to him. After a little while, after discussing with him, he said, I've never voted for a Democrat before in my life, but I'm going to give you a fair shake in November.
Thank you. Sue.
Thank you very much. I want to applaud all of the people at the table here. It is hard to put yourself out here, to put your values, to put what you believe in front of the people, and then have them sometimes thrown back at you in a way that maybe doesn't represent where you're at. I do think I want to put forth a couple of issues. Chief Tupper, I support the police. You know that from the day that we gave money to Impact and other programs that we've done for law enforcement. I never turned my back on it. There was a bill, a budget bill, that had some police increase in it, but it also had in it the training and personnel budgets for the corrections institutions. That same year, we had lost 2 corrections officers due to them getting murdered by inmates. It wasn't that I didn't support police. There was not enough in the budget for that support. The same goes, I have been a strong stance for teachers as a member of my teachers union and a 3-time president to make working conditions and salaries for teachers better, but to make it better for the kids in our community. So you just have to look at and do your research on your candidates. It is important to me that you know some of the things out there, they're taken out of context. I don't blame David. No, I'm going to go a little longer because I got a call this morning, or got an email this morning saying, oh, the ads are awful. David must be an awful person. And I said, no, not at all. David's a good person. I believe that all the way through. He may be getting managed by some other people who have different goals than he does. But it's important to know we are not carrying this over to that personal level. He's not a bad person. I'm not a bad person. We want many of the same things. And that's coming to another point. Maybe next time we can question reform in advertising for campaigns.
Oh, there was a whole question around that, but we did not have time to get to that. I do want to thank all of you for taking time to respond to that. Ryan for providing some levity in the responses on that. And truthfully, I wanted to ask that question tonight because I want to rehumanize political process and the fact that you folks are all willing to stand up to be judged by a group of peers in an incredibly divisive political environment. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank and appreciate all of you for being willing to step forward and put yourselves out there. So we are running up on time, so we are going to move into closing remarks. We'll begin with Kara. You will all have 90 seconds to provide a closing remark. And so, Kara, go first.
The time goes quick, doesn't it? And I know you have a lot of questions that we didn't get to. I am first and foremost a wife and a mom. My daughters are 12 and 14 in public school in Story County. And I want them to have wonderful opportunities. And I want your kids and grandkids to have wonderful opportunities. And I think while it's our job in a forum like this to maybe point out where we have differences, there are so many things that Iowans have in common. And there are so many things that we can celebrate about our state and even about our nation, which hopefully, a week from now we can get back to, right? I feel privileged to live in America. I feel grateful for my father and grandfathers and for the veterans at our table here, those who've chosen to fight to protect the freedoms that we have. And I would love to represent you at the Capitol and try to make it cool again to work across the aisle and to take ideas regardless of what color they are. And just to solve the difficult problems that are in front of us. It is trickier when there's so many good ideas and everything's expensive and money is tight for families, right? These aren't easy problems to solve, but I will bring a lot of energy, desire to ask questions, and to look at data, to look for ideas from other states, from the past, and really to have a solution-oriented approach and a positive and unifying approach to the way I would represent you in the Capitol. So thanks for the opportunity.
Mike.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I really appreciate your time and your attention. I know this is an economic forum debate, so there were a few things that I think are really important to Iowans that we didn't get a chance to talk about tonight. And those things are the reason I'm running. I feel like there's been a lot of policies at the State House over the last few years that are incredibly unpopular with the people of Iowa. And unless we vote for a change in leadership, unless we vote to send more Democrats to our State House, we will continue down this path of poor leadership and of bad bills. The voucher program that is in place right now is sending hundreds of millions of dollars out of our public school system into the void. There is no oversight for that money. It is a recipe for disaster. We will waste our money. We will be stolen from, and our kids will lose educational opportunities. I'm running against that. Iowans don't want eminent domain to be abused for private gain. I am running to try and stop that from happening. Iowans don't want their area education associations to be torn apart. I want to put that back together. It offered rural Iowans real access to the care their children need to grow. And Iowans don't want the 6-week abortion ban. 60% of Iowans want abortion to be safe and legal in most cases. I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan.
I'm not a politician, wasn't raised as one, didn't want to be one, and what I have found out during this season is there's a sickening amount of money involved in politics. Really gross. That's one of the reasons I'm running. I believe that our entire system of financing these campaigns needs to be overhauled. It shouldn't take $90,000 to $100,000 to run a 2-county race in the middle of Iowa. It's silly. That money could go, we talk about financing and funding programs. Just think of what $100,000 could do for the city of Marshalltown. what it could do for Nevada or Cambridge or Collins. So at the end of this campaign, whatever money I have, I'm going to donate to a nonprofit in this district. I know Brett's not here, but I challenge him to do the same. Politicians don't need war chests. We shouldn't need war chests in District 51. And the way you get things to change is you take the first step. I don't have $100,000, but whatever I do have should go back to the people of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate being here tonight. I guess one thing I would like to say is that you know me. I've been around Marshalltown 35 years, or almost 35 years, raised my kids here, have been involved in many things. Sat on city council, served for 2 terms at the State House. Prior to that, 3 terms as president of the local MEA for our school unions. Worked at a national level and state level for those. I have the experience. I have the ability to listen. Yesterday I'm knocking on doors, and a gentleman, and he may not vote for me, as we came through, we talked about whether it was, what he believed in and what I believed in. But he said, I've sent you some emails before, and you always have answered me back. And he said, that's in your favor for my voting. I will listen to people. We're not going to agree on every piece of legislation, but I'm really working to do what's best for Iowans in Marshalltown, LeGrand, Ferguson, Gilman, Laurel, and Haverhill, and all the parts south in our county. I would love for your vote on November 5th, and I would love to carry forth and be your voice. It's important that you realize you don't just get a seat at the table, you have to earn a seat at the table. Thank you.
Thank you. And David.
Yeah, thank you to the college, thank you to the chamber, thank you to the community leaders for being here. Thank you for my dad, who's a structural engineer, my mom, who's a teacher, for coming. Thank you for teaching me and also teaching kids here in the community. I really appreciate what you've done for our family and for the kids around here. I believe it's really important that we fund every student's education, regardless of their parents' creed, without bigotry or malice, and that every student has the opportunity to succeed. I believe that we need a strong representative with a strong voice in Des Moines to advocate on behalf of the Iowa Veterans Home, the residents who have served our country, and the staff who need our support. We need to fight for high-quality jobs in Marshalltown, make sure that we protect the businesses who are already here, our hardworking union members who are fighting for fair wages, fair contracts, and safe conditions, and that we make sure we keep taxes low on working families and retirees here in Marshalltown, specifically by making sure we don't tax Social Security income, retirement income, or veterans benefits at the state level, and make sure Marshalltown and Marshall County is the veterans capital of Iowa. I appreciate all of your consideration. I would appreciate your vote on or before November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, and please join me in thanking all the candidates. So I apologize, I have stolen an additional 5 minutes. I do have a couple of additional acknowledgments. One, I want to make sure I acknowledge KFJB and KFJB-TV for allowing the live streaming tonight and supporting us in this effort. A reminder that the election is coming Tuesday, November 5th. Early voting is currently available for those that are in Marshall County. That is at the Marshall County Election Center. And then polls will be open on Election Day from 7 a.m. till 8 p.m. Thank you for attending and participating in the election process. Have a great evening.